We are inside the submersible Titan, which is a carbon fiber and titanium sub that can go to the depths of the Titanic. Hi, my name is Stockton Rush. I'm the CEO and founder of Oceangate. Let's take a look at Titan. So we're coming into the sub. This is the only toilet available on a deep diving submersible. Best seat in the house. You can look out the viewport. We put a privacy screen in, turn up the music, and it's very popular. We have our control screen here, our sonar screen here, and we can put any image we want in the back. We've taken a completely new approach to the sub design, and it's all run with this game controller and these touch screens. So if you want to go forward, you press forward. If you want to go back, you go back. Turn left, turn right, go down, go up. And it's Bluetooth, so I can hand it to anybody. And it's meant for a 16-year-old to throw it around, and super durable. We keep a couple of spares on board just in case. This is the second year we've been out to the Titanic. We went out in 5 8-day missions. We did about 10 dives to the wreck site of the Titanic, and we did an extra dive on an undiscovered reef that we found. Completely privately funded operation, and we're funded by, we call mission specialists, who help support the mission. So they take quite a bit of money to come and join us. Years ago, the Russians took tourists out to the Titanic, and it was just sort of a look and see thing. We really are focusing on the science around it. We want to document what the wreck is like now, and also try to predict what it'll be like in the future. It's continuing to decay, and it seems to be accelerating. It's being eaten by a bacteria, so it's literally being eaten by the ocean. It's not rusting away. So these things that are called rusticles are actually the byproduct of a bacteria that eats the iron. And as it does that, these decks are collapsing. The promenade deck continues to collapse forward. We saw some of the railing is starting to lose its structural strength, which is really a sad thing. That's when it's going to stop looking like the Titanic. The interest in the Titanic is the reason we go there, because people are willing to fund this kind of exploration and science, and that gives a completely different research component that almost nowhere else in the deep ocean can you get funding to go back every year for decades and see how coral reefs develop, and see how metals decay, and see how currents change. I mean, that just, you can't justify that. No government will pay for that. Nobody wants to go back to just some old reef, but people do want to go back to the Titanic, and that's why we go, is because people want to go.
Titanic submersible that gripped the world's headlines met its end in what the US Coast Guard calls a catastrophic implosion that killed all 5 passengers aboard. But the search that led to this discovery and the race against time to find the passengers alive became a 5-day multinational rescue operation that captured global attention, not least due to the connection to the Titanic, the unsinkable British ship that met its tragic ending in 1912. Here's how it all unfolded and what we know so far about what happened.
This is an incredibly complex search operation.
We're losing time and we're losing opportunity to find them alive.
Oceangate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing.
On Saturday, the 17th of June, Oceangate's Titan submersible prepares for its voyage to the century-old wreck of the Titanic. That day, British billionaire and adventurer Hamish Harding, one of those aboard the sub, posts online saying, "A weather window has just opened up and we're going to attempt a dive tomorrow." He doesn't post online again. At 8 a.m. on Sunday, the Titan submersible begins its descent, triggering the 96-hour countdown, which is the window of oxygen supply the vessel has from the time it's sealed. It should be a 2-hour descent to the wreck of the Titanic, which lies at a depth of 12,500 feet in the North Atlantic Ocean. But 1 hour and 45 minutes after setting off, communications between the sub and the surface vessel are lost. This moment, it later transpires, is seemingly important. The submersible has been scheduled to return to the surface at 3 p.m, but it fails to appear. The Coast Guard is notified at 5:40 p.m. By Monday, US and Canadian ships and planes are swarming the area, some dropping sonar buoys that can monitor to a depth of 13,000 feet. Search teams stress that this is a remote area and a challenge to conduct a search. Officials also ask commercial vessels for help. On Tuesday, noises, reported to be banging sounds, are detected over several hours by a Canadian aircraft, which is equipped with gear to trace submarines. The noises temporarily offer hope that the Titan is still intact and that its occupants are alive and trying to communicate by banging on the hull. Officials later say analysis of the sound is inconclusive. At this point, Hamish Harding's friend says hopes are not high.
As it stands right now, it would be a miracle if they are recovered alive.
At 2 a.m. on Wednesday, the US Coast Guard announces it's deploying remotely operated vehicle searches to the area where the sounds were detected. A French research ship equipped with a deep-sea diving vessel makes its way to the search area.
The surface search is now approximately 2 times the size of Connecticut, and the subsurface search is up to 2.5 miles deep.
On Thursday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, the 96-hour oxygen window closes, diminishing any last hopes of finding the passengers alive. At 2 p.m., a debris field found on the seabed is confirmed to contain pieces of the Titan submersible. The pieces were found by a robotic diving vehicle deployed from a Canadian ship, lying some 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic. The US Coast Guard confirms the debris is consistent with the loss of the pressure chamber and an implosion, and that there were no survivors. So, when did the sub meet its fate? During the search operation, sonar buoys in the water didn't detect any loud or violent noise that would have been generated by an implosion. That suggests it happened before the search began. The position of the debris field near the Titanic seems to suggest the failure occurred near the end of its descent, all the way back on Sunday around 9:45 a.m. when contact with the sub was lost. Separately, it's been reported that acoustic data detected by the US Navy had an anomaly consistent with an implosion or explosion near the submersible's location when its communications were lost. In an interview with Reuters, James Cameron, who directed the Oscar-winning movie Titanic and has ventured to the wreck in subs himself, said he learned of the acoustic findings within a day and deduced what it meant.
Search, search, search. 4 days of search. They're searching everywhere. They were running around with their hair on fire. The sub was right where it was. It was literally on the seafloor below its last known position. Look, Monday morning when I first found out about the incident, within an hour and a half, I had the following information. They were on descent. They were at 3,500 feet. They lost comms and tracking. We got confirmation within an hour that there had been a loud bang at the same time that that comms were lost. I knew what happened. Sub imploded. I sent emails to everybody I know. I said, we've lost some friends.
Parts of the submarine that I'd seen in the testing in the Bahamas just seemed a bit shoddy. They're using industrial piping for ballast. They're using an Xbox controller for the steering. The strip lightings, something you get at a DIY shop. Small cramped surfaces. I wasn't happy with some of the design, like the thrusters on the outside with the cables there. I thought that was a snagging hazard. But what really did it for me was they flatly refused to get any form of certification. And it seemed that they had no intention of getting any certification for going down to those depths once, let alone several times. Oh, they also had a lightning strike during one of the testings, which blew all of the electronics. You know, these things happen, but they didn't have it ended the testing. And that made me ask, well, where's the redundancy? Because it's normal in a vessel of any form that has human life. You've got redundancy of things. You usually have two of two. So you'd have a redundant separate system, and then you'd have two of those. But the fact that one lightning strike blew the whole thing was, well, where's the safety measures here? So just all of those things together made me think there's a lot of risks here that I'm not able to mitigate and don't seem in control. So I pulled out at that point. That was the end of 2018. Let's be straight, it's not looking good. Oxygen's obviously very low. It's not just oxygen. The sub, let's assume it's at the bottom of the ocean. It could still be bobbing along at the surface, just unable to communicate. But that's an issue in itself, because here's another safety issue for me. It can only be opened from the outside. So if it's surface, they can't. They're still going to have oxygen problems. He's an extremely amiable guy, very, very level-headed. So he'll be a beacon of calmness in the whole thing. He's probably been calming down the other people in the sub. He's extremely intellectual, so he'll have been going through in his mind what they can do, what they can't do. Oh, let's try this, that's not right. It wouldn't surprise me if he was behind the bang that we think was happening every 30 minutes. I've said them my obvious thoughts and wishes. I don't want to pry too much. They've got an awful lot in their head. It must be awful for them. It must be really awful.
Oceangate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear. I wish I had been more vocal about that, but I think I was unaware that they weren't certified because I wasn't really studying it. I wasn't really interested. Stockton Rush asked me if I wanted to go out there and dive this season. I wasn't interested. There was a lot of concern about this outfit and this sub. A lot of concern, even to the extent that I wasn't involved in it because I was making Avatar 2 at the time, but a lot of them got together and wrote a letter to Oceangate and said, you have to certify. You cannot take people down. It's irresponsible, and it could lead to catastrophe. Monday morning, when I first found out about the incident, got on a whole bunch of calls and emails. It's a small community. Within an hour and a half, I had the following information. They were on descent. They were at 3,500 feet. They lost comms and tracking. The last one being the critical one, because the transponder that's used to track a sub during descent and on the bottom is a fully autonomous system. It's in its own pressure housing, and it has its own battery power. So for them to lose comms and tracking at the same time, sub was gone. There was no question in my mind. For days, I tried to run other scenarios that could account for it. I could come up with nothing. So the next thing I did was contacted a few more people and managed to track down, there are acoustic networks around. Some are research, some are intelligence. we got confirmation within an hour that there had been a loud bang at the same time that that comms were lost. A loud bang on the hydrophones, loss of transducer or transponder, loss of comms. I knew what happened. Sub imploded. I sent emails to everybody I know. I said, we've lost some friends. The sub has imploded. It's on the bottom in pieces right now. I sent that out Monday morning. I never believed in that technology of wound carbon fiber, wound filament, cylindrical hull. I thought it was a horrible idea. I wish I'd spoken up, but I assumed somebody was smarter than me, because I'd never experimented with that technology, but it just sounded bad on its face because we make pressure hulls out of contiguous material, steel, titanium, ceramic, acrylic. And so you can model it, you can do finite element analysis of it. And, you understand the yield properties, you understand the number of cycles that it can take. But you can't do that with a composite material because it's two dissimilar materials, sort of bonded together. And so we all knew that the danger was delamination and progressive failure over time with microscopic water ingress and fatigue, what they call cycling fatigue. And we knew that if the sub passed its pressure test, it wasn't going to fail on the first dive. It might fail on dive 7, or I don't know what they're at, but it's going to fail over time, which is insidious. You don't get that with steel or with titanium. Now there's one wreck lying next to the other wreck for the same damn reason.